Hello and welcome to this track analysis video. Today we're going to be taking a look at a track called Let Go by Duskus. This song did come out quite a while ago now, but one of my students was using it as a reference in one of their projects, and I thought there's a lot of really interesting elements in this track that we can break down and learn from. Now, before we get into the video, I just want to mention that we have finally made a Patreon. This is a way in which you can support our channel, and on the Patreon at the moment will be all the sample packs from all the previous track analysis videos we've done. Plus, on top of the regular free downloads, you'll also get all the Ableton instrument racks and audio effect racks included in this video too. And then an extended version of this video where we go into a little bit more detail. And as I said, it really does help support the channel, so go take a look at that in the description below. But let's get into the song. So as always, let's have a listen to the track in full. Now, I only ended up focusing really on the first main drop here because the second drop is pretty much identical. So let's start with some of the basic stuff. Tempo is 133 beats per minute. And the other interesting thing about this song is most of the big sections in the song are 8 bars in length rather than maybe a typical 16 bar. We've got the kind of intro, the build up, the drop, the second half of the drop, the breakdown, build up, drop, drop. And then it ends over here. And those shorter sections mean the track is actually a lot shorter. If we go from just after the beginning here until the end, the track is only really at 1 minute 55 in length. Whereas if you're going to get your track played on like a radio station, normally that'd be around 3 or 3.5 minutes. The structure in the second drop is basically the same as the first one. Could just copy and paste this over. There are a few more vocals in that second drop. The percussive like conga loops underneath are a little bit louder as well. But apart from that, it's pretty much the same melody. So that's why I've just left it as it is. Let's get on to the main attraction of the song, which is this kind of keys sound here. And there's loads of interesting things going on in terms of the sound design and the sound. But right now, let's focus on the composition. So the key of the track is B Dorian. And we finally have a different mode to talk about in these analysis videos. As you probably know, we talked about the Lydian mode quite a lot because it is used in a lot of dance music from the original minor scale. The Dorian mode is also a fantastic mode to use as well because it is very similar to the minor scale. The big difference between a minor scale and a Dorian scale is the 6th note is sharpened, which means it's just moved up by a semitone. If we go from B Dorian to B minor, you'll see this note here is that sharpened 6th note. It's not in the original minor scale. It should actually be on this G down here. As always, let's just have a listen to how it would sound in the minor scale by moving it down. Pretty terrible. Whereas in B Dorian, again, it's sharpened to be a note higher. Now the actual note sequence in here really just focuses on the first note of our chord or whatever root note we are playing and the third note in the top. The B here being the first and the D being the third. When we go down to F sharp, A is the third, and when we go down to E, That G sharp again is the third here, but we have a few extra notes dotted in just to create some tension in our sequence, like the C sharp here, which is the seventh note in relation to that B, creates some nice tension, which is then resolved nicely by this F sharp chord afterwards. The E note up here as well is accented quite a lot because it is a lot longer than most of the other notes, and this is our seventh note in relation to the bass note before it. Another really interesting thing about this chord sequence is the pitch bend on our E note here. If we go into the envelopes in Ableton Live 12 here, go down to the bottom left, go to MIDI control and pitch bend, you can see it's a big dip just after the beginning of the note here. And to me, it sounds like it does bend back up slightly closer to the end. Now that pitch bend doesn't happen on every single one of our phrases here. In the second set of phrases, the second 4 bars, we don't have that extended note and we don't have the pitch bend. In the third one, we get the pitch bend again, but we also get an additional note in this third section here, which lines up with our lowest bass note that we'll talk about later on. And this is playing an F sharp over the E, which is our second note. And then that note doesn't play in the final section and we don't have any pitch bend again. So it's very, very subtle changes where we've got these alternating pitch bend notes, and we've also got an additional note in the third part here, and those subtle variations mean that sequence can last for quite a bit longer. And so we get that sequence for 8 bars, and then in the second half of the drop, the exact same sequence, but we move everything up an octave. It's just a classic way of extending your melody out without changing it too much. Now there's a lot more stuff going on with these main keys. We'll talk about that in the sound design synthesis part of the video. Moving on to the soft keys, these are exactly the same as the chords above. They just have a different synth patch. They don't have the pitch bend, but it is the same melody, just repurposed with a new synth patch. The sub bass is very, very simple. It's just playing the lower notes of that main key sound that we were listening to above. Nothing fancy going on, it's just being used as a layer more than anything. And it's kind of similar with our drums too. Pretty simple overall pattern with the main drum beat here. Kick on every beat, clap on every other beat, open hi-hat in between. You've got a few alternating kick drum patterns between different sections. In this one, we have a double kick at the end. And in this one, we have a kick that lands on the last 16th note of the bar. Like that. Then it goes back to a double, and then there's the faster one here. It's not always exactly the same pattern, similar to the main keys really. There is a difference in the second half of our main kit here though. We have this additional closed hi-hat compared to this. Again, a really nice way when you listen to the whole song of just lifting the energy a little bit when you transition between these two sections. And then the drum pattern goes back to its more simple form over here. The only other thing that really happens is in this section we have this percussive sound that just lands on where the claps would normally land on the second and fourth beats. And when I heard this sound, it was immediately recognizable, and I just searched through this big drum machine library that I've got, and I think it's from the Roland TR-66 Rhythm Arranger. So looking at some of the other drums, we've got the swung hats, and they sound a little bit strange on their own, like very, very simple, but again, when you listen to them in context, And once again, they are landing on the 2nd and 4th 16th notes. To be honest, I don't even know why the groove has been applied into this sound here, but you can see this is the effect that the swing is having from our groove over here on these notes. It's just delaying them from where they should be, which is there. So I found a hi-hat loop just from the Ableton library, this one here. I used simpler in slice mode to slice it up, and then I right clicked on the background and converted this to a drum rack so that all the slices are now available as individual hits. Now the conga loops are quite interesting. When I first made the track, I added this conga loop in, which again is a sliced up sample, conga and tambourine, 106 beats per minute from the Ableton library. It just took quite a while to listen to exactly where it sounded like those congas were cutting through the drums. But then I thought, actually, it probably sounds like there's a full sample being played in the track. So I ended up adding this extra conga loop in here. But the corpus is turned off on this track, and I made a duplicate of this because I didn't really want to automate it. And this corpus is acting like a flanger, really. I couldn't get the exact right flanger sound for what I wanted that sounds similar to the original track. So I ended up thinking, well, I could use Corpus for this, which is a physical modeling plugin. Kind of makes things sound like they're being played through a material. The tube mode seemed to be the best for me. These settings, quite a short decay, quite a big radius for the tube. The key thing here is the LFO. Make sure that's turned on and brought the amount up. So you get this nice flanging effect, as you can hear. And that's really just using these build-up sections. Which again worked really well. It wasn't exactly the same as the original one, which sounds like a sample. Really, the main drum sound is, of course, this main kit at the top with just layers, just adding layers in to thicken up the drum kit. And of course, the vocals in here. The vocals are most likely sampled, or at least like a modified version of a vocal. And they kind of dip in and out, similar to like the conga loop that I was talking about before. There's lots of delays being used and reverbs to get these echoey. Like the actual vocals themselves are probably very short little slices of an original vocal. To kind of show you how you could do this yourself, I just did a similar thing with a different vocal that you probably might recognize. And all that's really going on in this is I've taken slices from a vocal that's been tuned into the same key, and I've got autofilter doing basically the same thing, where it's kind of increasing the cutoff and decreasing it. Bunch of delay then on afterwards, and that's pretty much it. And that's the thing about this song, is it's not overly complex. A lot of the track is going to be made in the automation that we'll talk about in the second part of this video, the synthesis as well. There are lots of subtle variations that just happen throughout the melody, the drum pattern, and some of the other instruments as well, that really just help extend the life of your original idea. But we're going to cover more of the sound design in the next part.